Hey, hey, hey. Happy Wednesday. Come on in, pull up a chair. The Gaming Gang Dispatch is in the air. Howdy, gang, and welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host here at the Gaming Gang Dispatch, brought to you by, incredibly enough, gaminggang.com, which I happen to be the founder and editor-in-chief, as well as Roll for Combat. Zoinks! We'll talk about our sponsor in just a few moments, but welcome aboard, everybody. Tonight is Wednesday, November 20th, 2024. This is live show number 1123. If you're not overly familiar with this show, let me point out, super casual, just hanging out, talking about the latest in tabletop gaming news. And then I will normally pontificate about a topic related to our hobby, which will be the case tonight, because I'm going to ask, is it finally time to leave Dungeons and Dragons and Wizards of the Coast behind? We'll talk. You'll share your thoughts. I'll share my thoughts. We'll discuss. But of course, that'll be after the tabletop gaming news of the day. But of course, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com, the newly redesigned gaminggang.com. Yes, thegaminggang.com. Why did I just say newly redesigned gaminggang.com? I don't know. It's only been 15 years, Jeff. Anyway, you're going to find plenty of tabletop gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more you were not going to see here on YouTube. Come on, you know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. And then, of course, because this is a live show, that means there is chat available. It's not on screen. It's one of the ways I keep some of the more unusual commenters at bay. And you must be a subscriber to the channel for at least 10 minutes, 10 whole minutes before you can take part in chat. Yet another way I keep some of the more unusual commenters at bay. But if you want to say howdy, maybe get a question, a comment, if you check both those boxes, subscriber, been hanging around for longer than 10 minutes, fire away. And I will do my very best to respond. First out the gate tonight, it is Pete Strakulich. And we also have Semper Buffo. Florida Saga author is joining us in chat. It's been a while since we have seen them. Mike is with us. AD, Jose Fernandez, Rivers RPG Channel, Bradley Thorpe, Cthulhu, Lenny Blade, James Eck, Bradley Thorpe, Kathy Evans, Sean O'Donnell, and Dan Kellogg. So boy, oh boy, we have got an absolutely jam-packed chat going on right this moment, right off the bat. And I will also take a guess that the lovely and talented Miss Sarah D just might be out there lurking in the shadows as our chat moderator with the glittery banhammer. So behave. Behave. Bradley Thorpe says, to be honest, the only reason they still buy D&D books is for the artwork. They've got nearly every 5th edition book. Jose Fernandez asks, what do I think about the Crooked Moon D&D 5e supplement? I know nothing about it, to be very honest. There's so much stuff out there I don't have access to or I don't have information about. Just like over on Blue Sky, which I have been on Blue Sky for quite some time, back when it was invite only, someone had commented something about, hey, are you going to give a shout out to the Smurfs role playing game over on Kickstarter? I had already taken a peek at it. It's not impressing me. And to be honest, I don't think it's really designed for my audience. So, no, that's about all it's going to get is that shout out right there. I'm not going to share a news piece or anything like that. Sarah D is with us, as is my good pal from high school, Scott Weigel. And DB is also popping on in. Bradley Thorpe asks if I've reviewed Midnight Legacy of Darkness. I have not. That I have not. I don't get too deep into like 5e third-party supplements outside of like Roll for Combat. All depends. Sometimes like Adventure a Week games, I've shared coverage of some of their stuff, but we've talked about this before, and we'll actually get into a little more detail about this when we kind of get into tonight's topic. I mean, there's a lot of crap out there for 5e, and I'm going to assume there's going to be a lot of crap out there for 5.5 as well. When I say a lot of crap out there, I'm talking third party. I'm not necessarily pigeonholing only Wizards of the Coast. But yes, there is a lot of absolute trash out there. So it's pretty hit or miss. Pretty hit or miss. Bradley Thorpe says almost any movie or TV show can be turned into a tabletop role-playing game nowadays. Yeah, not too hard. Not too hard. The reality is with the Smurfs, I wasn't going to share any info about it because it looks like there's a lot of peripheral stuff for it, like dice trays and things like that. But as far as like a rules system, it looks like just little booklets of maybe 30 pages in length. Another of our chat moderators is popping on in. Flaming Huron is with us tonight. I'll take a wild stab that the Madman, one of our other friends of the show, who's a chat moderator, is probably running games tonight because we know every other Wednesday is his game night with his group. So we probably will have Miss Sarah D as well as Flaming Huron as our chat moderators tonight. Got a busy chat going on. All right, so let's talk about our sponsor. That's right, because currently the Dispatch is being sponsored by Roll for Combat and their Year of Titans Kickstarter, which launched last week. It includes 13 new playable species, which you're going to receive at least one each and every month of 2025. In fact, January is going to be a double dip for you. It's going to include unique species and subspecies you will not find anywhere else. And each of these species does include extensively developed lore and fully developed cultural insights. You'll find ancestral feats. The 5e D&D version will have new backgrounds. Regardless of which flavor, you'll also receive over 20 tokens depicting the species in a variety of character options. Well. It is designed for both 5e and we'll have to assume 5.5, as well as Pathfinder 2nd Edition. And if you're going with the Pathfinder Edition, then you're going to also receive a free ancestry file with each of the species. And you'll even get access to the development team. That's right. I do understand you will get Stephen Glicker's personal phone number, his home phone number, which he welcomes you to call any hour, day or night, with any questions you might happen to have with not only Year of Titans, but any of the Battle Zoo releases from Roll for Combat. That's my understanding. I could be wrong. I don't know. There is a short Kickstarter video. Let's give it a peek.
Remember the last time you played a tabletop RPG and your friend cast a fireball spell, killing all the enemies and exploding your whole adventuring party? I know they say that living well is the best revenge. Well, how about you play as a living fireball spell and let revenge be the best revenge with Battlezoo Ancestry's Year of Titans. Once a month for the next year, you'll receive a unique playable species you won't find anywhere else for your D&D 5th Edition or Pathfinder 2e games. Now you can play as a living spell, a skillful cyclops, a wicked troll, or even a mighty kraken. And those are just the ones I can pronounce. An hair jar?
It's pronounced ein hairyar.
Say tires?
It's satyrs.
Okay, I think I got this one. Dual hand.
Doulahan. It's a headless horseman from Irish folklore, you gigantic tit.
Every month you'll receive a new PDF or Foundry VTT module, along with handmade battle maps, tokens for your virtual tabletop, both static and animated, and detailed in-world lore entries, allowing you to easily add these unique species to your next tabletop session. All this and more for less than a monthly Egg McMuffin. Delicious. Head on over to the link in the description to learn more, because if you sign up for the Kickstarter, you'll get a bonus species a year early. The Mighty Titan. That's 13 unique species throughout 2025 to amaze your friends and family. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to call my dungeon master and tell them that I'm going to be playing as Godzilla from now on. Godzilla.
As you see, you're going to get exactly what you need to effortlessly add fantastic new playable species into your campaign. Now, this Kickstarter is well past the 750% funding mark. You can reserve your Year of Titans for either Dungeons & Dragons or Pathfinder in PDF, or for the Foundry Virtual Tabletop. Now, you can make your choice, and you can reserve that for a $59 pledge. Or if you want to get PDFs and Virtual Tabletop elements, you can do that as well for a $99 pledge. This is through December 12th. Delivery will begin in January. Thus, the Year of Titans. And of course, yes, through the power of magic, I actually have the hardcover edition of all 13 species in Year of Titans in hardcover. That's right. I have the only copy. That's right. I'm telling you. But I'm afraid Stephen from Roll for Combat will not allow me to share any of the content within this book. And have you seen him? He's like 6'5". He's got to be like 280, and it's all muscle. So I'm not messing with that dude. Steven knows I tease him. It's out of love. It's out of love. So DB says they're writing a Facts of Life tabletop role-playing game. Yes, very nice. Bradley Thorbass, what's my favorite tabletop role-playing game this year? None of your goddamn business. Always pushing your weight, asking me questions. Always. I gotta be honest, I think I would probably have to say my favorite that I was exposed to for the first time this year, because I got to be honest, I'm not sure if I remember correctly, if it was this year it came out, or if it was like towards the end of last year it came out, like in PDF, and then a couple months later it came out. I'm going to say probably Dragonbane. Probably. I really like Mouse Ritter. Mouse Rita! But that's old. But I had my first opportunity to kind of dive on into it. A lot of the stuff that I've reviewed this year have been more along the lines of supplements as opposed to like full-fledged systems. I mean, granted, I did just review the Neon Lords of the Toxic Wasteland Carnage Edition, if you missed that. And I gave that a really high review score, but I even pointed out I would not run it as written. I love a lot of the ideas in it. I mean, it is just a cornucopia of cool post-apocalyptic gonzo ideas. As an actual system itself, I don't know about that. 80 said, hey, I haven't heard of that role-play game, Jeff. What's it called? None of your what? Walona's Cave is with us, as is Chris Lundgren. Chris Lundgren and his cockatiel buddy are hanging with us tonight. Paul Bigby is watching live. Very nice to see you. Toon Jerowich is also joining us once again, saying hello from Thailand. Well, howdy. Howdy, howdy. All right, let's jump on into the news because there is a new science fiction game which is up on the GMT Games P500 pre-order list. Looks kind of cool, I should say. Hang on, let me rephrase. Sounds really cool. GMT has not shared like really exciting images for it, but this is what I know about Echo from the Dark. Emperor Cormac II is dead. Interesting side note. That's actually the name that I use for a lot of fantasy characters is Cormac, especially like PC game role-play games. Cormac McArt, actually. But yeah, I thought that was kind of funny. Oh, Emperor Cormac, huh? Oh, all right, Cormac. His opulent space station locked down and strewn with bodies. Reports claim a biological weapon killed him and his cabinet. Today, the fraying twine holding an interstellar humanity together slips free of his dying fingers. Chaos has erupted. Old and new factions have drawn lines across the empire, separating those who would fix the mistakes of the past from others striving to transform civilization. Propaganda barks out of every market and network. Underneath the din, naval crews take to their ships and quietly charge their weapons. There is neither a precedent nor prediction to help us now. When Inter-Universal Salt opened our first wormhole just 11 years ago, only one fundamental truth was retold. If you change one rule, you change the entire game. Inter-Universal Salt, a little spice. Yeah, okay. Echo from the Dark is the fourth game in the Irregular Conflict series, depicting an interstellar struggle between divergent factions after humanity discovers a material that allows for faster than light travel and communication. Players will use this material to deploy unique technologies that shape their faction identity across the course of the game, meaning that every playthrough is a unique experience. As they expand across the galaxy, the human population will follow, providing new incentives and opportunities. Eventually, their visions for the future will prove to be irreconcilable. Only one player will be able to determine the fate of humanity. This includes a highly variable setup. Choose from a selection of different factions to arrange on a modular map. As the game goes on, players will discover valuable salt and dangerous anomalies that further change the texture of the map. It's got a shifting population. At this scale, population grows, moves, and declines over time, encouraging factions to consider the longer-term ramifications of their actions. Every round reveals a new technology that can be researched to shape each faction over the course of the game. And you have unique non-player opposition. Aliens, artificial intelligence, and disease form some of the possible opposition factors that each act through their own special system. Streamlined sequence of play. Every faction may act on every round with smaller actions, allowing a player better initiative in the next round. Player factions all have access to the same basic actions and can use research technology no matter what action they take. Echo from the Dark is for 1 to 4 players, ages 14 and up, plays in 2 to 3 hours. You can reserve a copy of the game at the P500 price of $85. It's going to have an eventual MSRP of $122, which is kind of surprising. This game must be packed with a lot of tiles, is my guess, to have a price like that. So, but I got to say, this sounds really interesting. So this is supposed to be kind of a lightweight coin release. So that's what the Irregular Conflict series of games is. They're sort of rules light or rules lighter coin games. So if you're familiar with the coin series and the various different coin titles from GMT Games, then you'll be right at home with Echo from the Dark. Gotta say, this sounds really interesting, and it will also have non-player bots. So each of the factions, if you don't have 4 players, let's say you're playing 2 players, you'll have 2 other factions, and they'll be controlled by an AI, along with those other non-player opponents. Sweet. Sounds pretty cool. All right, moving right along. Catalyst Game Labs is offering a 35th anniversary print edition of Shadowrun. It's going to be arriving next month. Here's the lowdown. The year is 2050. The blending of technology and human flesh began in the late 20th century. Interfacing the human mind with computers was just the first step. Implants that jack up reflexes and cybernetic replacements followed quickly. Then came the awakening, a 5,000-year lull in the flow of mystical energies subsided and magic returned to the world. Elves, dwarves, and trolls assumed their true forms, throwing off their human guise. In the world of 2050, the megaplexes are monsters casting long shadows. As shadow runners, that's where you live, in the cracks between the giant corporate structures. When the megacorps want something done, but they don't want to dirty their hands, it's a shadow run they need. They come to you. Though your existence is not acknowledged by any governmental or corporate database, the demand for your services is high. You might be a technomancer, sliding like a whisper through the databases of giant corporations, spiriting away the only thing of real value, information. Or perhaps you're a street samurai, an enforcer for hire whose combat skills and reflexes make you the ultimate urban predator. Or perhaps a mage, one with an ancient gift, the ability to wield and shape the magical energies that now surround the earth. And that's exactly the kind of firepower you'll need if you get hired to make a Shadowrun. To celebrate the 35th anniversary of Shadowrun, Catalyst Game Labs is thrilled to present this restored version of the book that started it all. The illustrations and graphics have been cleaned up, and they've recreated the look and feel of the original book. So you'll be able to take a look at one of the landmarks of role-playing games, the book that launched a game universe that continues strong to this day. Okay, that's their words, not mine. The 235-page hardcover is going to carry an MSRP of $49.99. It is slated for a December 12th release. You can grab just the PDF right now over at Drive-Thru RPG for $19.99. I got to say, I have a soft spot for original Shadowrun. I remember picking it up. This is back when I was with FASA. And I was like, wow, this is really different. This is super new. Mechanically, sort of clunky, I seem to remember. But I used to pick up a lot of the Shadowrun stuff just to read it. Same thing with like Deadlands. I would pick up Deadlands stuff. Never ran it. I just would pick it up and read it. So kind of cool to see a 35th anniversary edition of the book available. I understand it's going to have much better production quality as far as the book itself. So you are going to have like thicker paper stock and things like that. So Chris Lundgren says, why not get the original book? I see it in used bookstores pretty often. Yeah, I get it. I understand. I mean, probably because it's going to have a little better production quality is what the story is. Now, keep in mind, this is not an edit. So this is going to be exactly what you saw in the original book 35 years ago. So blemishes and all are going to be in this. So there is not anything that's been tweaked or reimagined or anything like that. So there you have it. But kind of cool. Like I said, I've got a soft spot. I have a nostalgic soft spot for Shadowrun. I personally think Catalyst Game Labs has not done a great job with Shadowrun, to be honest. And only thing I've seen in the latest edition was I reviewed the starter set and it was awful. It was just a mess. It wasn't necessarily bad as far as content. It was just structurally a mess. It was all over the place. And I think that kind of goes with the territory as far as Shadowrun. I don't know. Got a few more people popping on into chat. Tessie Trekkie is with us. Lewin RX. Wizards of the Tower is popping on in. Said, never got into Shadowrun. AD says they always wanted to run original Shadowrun. Don't think it's supported by any virtual tabletop. I think you might be wrong. Take a look at Foundry. Because you got to keep in mind, with Foundry, there are a lot of unofficial modules that are out there. So, as an example, if you're interested in Castles and Crusades, there is an unofficial module for Foundry because the fine folks over at Troll Lord Games have not completed their Foundry module yet. So take a peek. Take a peek. You might be surprised, might be pleasantly surprised. Don't know. Kevin R. Smith says Catalyst appears to have gone downhill since 4E. I sort of have the impression that Catalyst Game Labs is another one of these companies that just tries to get things done on the cheap. And maybe they don't have enough people in-house working on stuff. And I don't have any like personal animosity towards them. I mean, they did give me a copy of the starter set for Shadowrun to review. It's sort of like once I didn't necessarily savage it, but I did give it a less than stellar review score. And I don't think they were too thrilled with that. Kevin R. Smith says, didn't Shadowrun first edition have the changing target numbers and thresholds? So Game Masters had so many levers and no idea what manipulating them actually did. I don't remember it that well. Like I said, remember, I didn't run it. So, Chris Lundgren says they found a copy of Top Secret. Hey, my friend Scott will remember us playing that in high school. And I think Scott and our friend Tim Phelan were the ones who ran Top Secret. I think actually it might have been Tim more so than Scott. So Chris Lundgren says they found a copy in an antique store. It was pristine, but they wanted $250 for it. Well, I mean, if it was like in shrink, maybe not a bad deal there. So, little bit of discussion about BattleTech. That's cool. Like I said, I don't have anything against Catalyst Game Labs. I wish them success. The reality is I wish nearly every single game publisher out there success. Now, do they pull it off? Not necessarily. In fact, I'm about to share a news piece about another company that has kind of kicked the ball all over the place because Ulisses Spiele has teamed with Bundle of Holding to offer a new money-saving deal featuring the two most recent Torg Eternity Cosms, and I've got the deets on that deal. Storm Knight, this Torg Eternity Cosms 3 bundle, presents English language PDFs for the Tharcold and Pan-Pacifica settings for Torg Eternity, the cinematic cross-genre tabletop role-playing game of the Possibility Wars from Ulisses Spiele. The Torg Eternity core rulebook and drama deck are not included in this offer. So if you're new to the game, first thing you'd want to get is the Torg Eternity starter pack with the core rulebook, drama deck, and day one scenarios in the Bundle of Holding store. I got to point out, I did not know that there was a Bundle of Holding store. There is. So there are some bundles for a variety of role-playing games that you can pick up that are always available. I think there were about a dozen when I took a peek. And yes, Torg Eternity was one of them. So regardless, this doesn't have the core rules or the drama deck, things that you need to run the game. So keep that in mind. But Tharcold is a Cold War techno horror realm of demonic occult tech, cybernetic Warthals, and the irradiated, mutant-infested blasted zone. It's actually Russia, if I remember correctly. The high-tech Kanawha Corporation of Pan-Pacifica has concealed its invasion through skillful deep fakery and social media campaigns, aided by Jiangxi pandemic, and that's basically turned millions into hopping vampires. For just $19.95, you'll get all 10 complete titles in the starter collection, which actually has a retail value of $120 as DRM-free PDFs, including the Tharcold sourcebook and its booster deck, the Pan-Pacifica sourcebook and its booster deck, the full-length Tharcold campaign, Blood on the Blasted Lands, as well as its soundtrack, and the full-length Pan-Pacifica campaign, Operation Soft Cell, and its soundtrack, the Tharcold Wastelander's Guide sourcebook and the Pan-Pacifica sourcebook, Dr. Y and the Jiangxi and Kanawha operations. And just think of the possibilities if you pay more than the current threshold price of $30.34, because you'll level up and also get the entire bonus collection with 12 more titles worth an additional $115.50, which includes 6 Tharcold supplements, Delphi Missions Tharcold, the GM Screen and Archetypes, GM Pack, Map Pack 1 and Map Pack 2, and the digital-only set, and the 6 equivalent supplements for Pan-Pacifica, Delphi Missions, Pan-Pacifica, the GM Screen and Archetypes, GM Pack, Map Packs 1 and 2, as well as its digital-only set. These savings will run through December 9th. I have to say, you may recall years ago, I started reviewing Torg Eternity, and Ulisses Spiele was looking to try to make inroads into the United States with Torg. It was a new edition that had come out, as well as I believe it's the 3rd edition of The Dark Eye, which, of course, is very popular in Germany, not so much here in the U.S. And they were kind of going all out to really expose Americans to their games. And then they just fumbled that operation. It was like, because give you a great example here. So Torg Eternity is this super like gonzo multi-genre role-playing game where like the United States, most of the United States is the lost lands. It's kind of like dinosaurs and intelligent lizards and stuff like that. And then Britain is like a fantasy world. And then, of course, as I mentioned, we've got the horror with Tharkold, which is like Russia. And then you've got your cyberpunk, which is Pan-Pacifica. Then there's the cyber papacy, which is like really wild. And that's kind of like France and stuff. So its concept is really, really unique, very interesting. It was an old West End Games setting and series that they released a lot of stuff for. Same thing with Ulisses Spiele. They've released a lot of stuff for this. The problem lies with the system itself. When I talk about clunky systems, if you looked in a dictionary and it was like clunky role-playing games, there would be a picture of Torg, or I should say Torg Eternity, because the original West End Games is Torg. And it's, you know, if it didn't rely on these cards as well as dice, it would be all right. It would probably be pretty decent, but it doesn't. I mean, and there's really no way for you to just be like, yeah, let's not use those cards. It's kind of baked into the cake. You can't take it out. Other thing that's kind of a knock against Torg is it's got like a meta plot, and it has not really advanced too far. So one of the things that was a big selling point, as well as kind of a knock on the original Torg, was its meta plot. So you had, think of like Dragonlance, right? So it's sort of like, okay, so you've got these adventures and stuff, but the reality is they're not really affecting the overall story arc because that's already set in stone, essentially. That's kind of what Torg was. Here, as far as I understand, and I got to point out, I am not like completely up on Torg Eternity. It's only advanced so far with the meta plot because what they were looking to do, they needed to get each of these cosms out, and it has taken years for them to do that. But now I believe all of their cosms are out. Will we see an advancement? I don't know. I have no idea. Something else to keep in mind, if you go to the Ulisses Spiele website for the US, it's never updated. I think their forum is, but their actual website itself hasn't really been updated since like 2022. So sadly, I think Ulisses Spiele has put the American gamer way, way on the back burner. So Chris Lundgren asks if I've ever heard of the Babylon 5 Wars game from Agents of Gaming. I have not. I don't have really any interest in Babylon 5. I know people all tell me, oh, Jeff, you got to check it out. You just got to get past like the first season or two. It's kind of like, Tessie Treggy says their Discord doesn't see much English action. I would also think their Discord probably has a lot of focus on the Dark Eye, which is another game that they're really slow in their support for. Just like I believe it's called Aventuria. They did a card game for Aventuria. And I guess they've got a board game that they're going to kickstart a new edition of. And I guess they were originally planning that Kickstarter to launch in 2022, and it still hasn't launched. So it's like, oh, okay. Dark Autumn Scribe is with us in chat, says Torg is an amazing game. At least the original version, I guess, is. Tessie Draggy says their issue with Torg isn't the cards, it's that their dice roll needs to go through another table to determine if they succeed. Yeah, like we were talking about, and I know other people have commented too. Clunky. Very, very clunky. All right, moving right along. Now in print and PDF is Cthulhu by Gaslight's Investigator's Guide from our friends over at Chaosium Inc. Here's the skinny. Adventure, mystery, and horror in the 1890s. Cthulhu by Gaslight takes the Call of Cthulhu role-playing game to the fog-shrouded streets of Great Britain and beyond. The 1880s, Victorian England. Mystery and adventure in a fog-shrouded street and alleyway. Secret cabals commit grisly murder, wicked crimes, and pledge to bring about the ruin of civilization, all within the square mile of the city of London. Cthulhu by Gaslight is a standalone game and contains the complete rules for the Call of Cthulhu role-playing game, including character creation. You do not need a copy of the Call of Cthulhu Keeper Rulebook or a Call of Cthulhu starter set to play. The Cthulhu by Gaslight Investigator's Guide can be enhanced with the Call of Cthulhu role-playing game, as well as the Pulp Cthulhu supplement, which, of course, are both available separately. You'll get a complete list of weapons and equipment appropriate for the Gaslight period, rules for exploring in the 1890s, and an extensive information block on fringe science and the occult practices of the time. The book also includes 10 pre-generated Cthulhu by Gaslight investigators. This 296-page hardcover with PDF finally arrived in stores. That's right. Could have gotten a copy at Gen Con. They had a few. In fact, you might recall, my review's been out for quite some time. But this has finally arrived in stores. If you order from Chaosium Inc., you will receive the PDF absolutely free. The hardcover carries an MSRP of $49.99, or you can grab just the PDF alone over at Drive-Thru RPG for $24.99. You may recall, I really liked this. I really did. I gave it, off the top of my head, I want to say it's an 8.5 out of 10 as far as my review. I thought there was quite a lot of really good information about the period in the book. I also dinged it a little bit because, for one, we have to wait till like next year to see the Keeper's Handbook, or whatever they're calling it, Keeper's Guide to this, which I would have liked to have seen both of them actually arrive at the same time, because this feels a little bit incomplete. But all in all, really nicely done. Very, very cool. And I will say, some people have asked me, hey, you know what? How do I know if I should pick this up or not? How would I know my players are going to enjoy it? And the answer I have, actually, Rory is in chat with us. Might be a first-time visit live for Rory. Says, think Sherlock Holmes, Jack the Ripper, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, Dracula. Of course, the mythos. Yes. So, yeah, if your players would be interested in, recreating kind of the Victorian era of Sherlock Holmes with the Cthulhu mythos, then by all means, I would definitely recommend pick it up. If they're sort of like, nah, then unless you want to enjoy reading it, I would say you can take a pass. So there we go. All right. Rory said they had ordered Cthulhu by Gaslight, and they have the PDF. It's terrific. Definitely a viable alternative setting to the 1920s. Yeah, most definitely. The Badger is with us in chat. Welcome aboard. Kevin R. Smith says it's basically the 1890s era that was used in the 6th edition core book. Funny enough, I think the last edition I had purchased of Call of Cthulhu before 7th came out was 4th. Because the reality is it hasn't changed that much. Yeah, there were some changes in 7. Some for the better, some not so much. So there you have it. It is finally out. And Darius Termina is with us in chat. I don't think I've said hello to them already today. Final news piece. Second issue of the Electrum Archive is out in print and PDF from Cult of the Lizard King and Exalted Funeral. Here's the scoop. Titan Port, Sea of House Kur Onar, haven for those who venture forth into the Electrum Sea. This is the second issue of the Electrum Archive, an RPG zine series exploring the science fantasy setting of Orn, a world where adventurers delve into ancient alien shipwrecks in search of a magical ink, which is used as both currency and spellcasting fuel. Issue 2 focuses on Titan Port, a desert city teeming with scheming factions and opportunities for adventure. It's a perfect setting location for your adventures in the surrounding Electrum Sea and beyond. So what are you going to find in this zine? Besides descriptions of Titan Port's districts and factions and the wonderful black and white illustrations, this 80-page zine includes 2 table-ready adventures in Titan Port, a dungeon crawl through an old tomb which now houses a flesh crafter and her experiments, and a heist to steal an item from an influential warlock's tower, a procedure for downtime activities like martial training, crafting, carousing, building institutions, trapping spirits, undergoing flesh graft surgery, and more. There are rules for hirelings, drugs, NPC warlocks, traveling the desert, haggling, and more. New backgrounds and character options for vagabonds, fixers, and warlock characters. A random mutation table for those unfortunate enough to inhale warp gas. Rules for haggling and a table of rare trade goods, as well as a large map of Titan Port. This 80-page zine with PDF carries an MSRP of $29 over at Exalted Funeral. Or if you want to just grab the PDF alone, you can do so over at Drive-Thru RPG for $14. Sweet. This looks really cool. I seem to recall sharing news about the first issue of this. And it's got sort of that science fantasy vibe going. Science fantasy vibe. Pretty sweet. Pretty nice. And looks like it's pretty well laid out too. And it's not aiming for some like art punk style. It's like, hey, look at all the artwork. Oh, game stuff? Who cares about that? This is art punk. No, not at all. All right, that is it for the news portion tonight. Of course, I was just talking about Drive-Thru RPG. Don't forget, the Gaming Gang, thus the Dispatch, is affiliated with the One Bookshelf sites. So if you are going to visit Drive-Thru RPG, Storyteller's Vault, Dungeon Masters Guild, Wargame Vault, what have you, please stop by thegaminggang.com first. Click on one of our banner ads. That way, if you happen to make a purchase, I get a small portion of that sale, 5% to be precise. And all those nickels, dimes, and quarters really do add up and help keep thegaminggang.com around the newly redesigned thegaminggang.com. If you like this video, if you like the video, if you dig the channel, if you find thegaminggang.com to be a valuable resource, hell, if you just like what we do, you can always swing on over to paypal.me/thegaminggang to make a small donation. Hell, you can buy me a 2-liter bottle of soda. Oh, that's wet. And there are some of you out there who pop on by paypal.me/gaminggang and make not small donations, such as my friend Scott Weigel, John Webster, Craig Watkins, and friend of the show, the Madman, all recently popped on over and made very generous donations. So thanks to everybody. If you use the banner ads over on thegaminggang.com and or if you visit paypal.me, it is much appreciated because I don't run Kickstarters. I don't dip my hand in your pockets all the time. You guys really are the ones who help keep not only the gaminggang.com website around, but this stream as well. So there you go. Very nice. W Forge is with us in chat. Agile Monk is popping on in, said, don't forget me, Jeff. Trying to remember. Oh, yeah, that's right. I'm sorry. I did forget Agile Monk. Thank you, Agile Monk. The Badger says they're in a Champions campaign. They have a supervillain named Dr. Jackal. Not Jekyll, Dr. Jackal. Sweet. Very nice. Kevin R. Smith was asking, was that a Gorn, the lizard alien Kirk fought in the Star Trek original series? Yes, that was a Gorn. That was and funny enough, we've talked about Starfleet battles on and off a little bit in the past. For whatever reason, I always played the Gorn ships. I don't know what it was. I don't know. Kind of weird. Kind of weird. Rory says their absolute favorite Call of Cthulhu product is the first edition reprint box set, available in 1-inch or 2-inch varieties. In fact, someone just recently asked on I think it was the review video, should they get the 1-inch box or should they get the 2-inch box if they've got a lot of Call of Cthulhu PDFs? And my response to that was, well, it all depends on what you've got. If you already have some of the classic Call of Cthulhu releases that are in that 2-inch box, all in all, it's still a really, really nice box set. And people might disagree with me, but you can easily run Call of Cthulhu today using the stuff that's in that box. And you will get years of gaming out of that too. So Rory says a 2-inch box, that should be. AD says 2-inch box is awesome. One of their best investments ever. The Badger says, Lord, I miss playing Starfleet battles. Yeah, back in the day, like when it first came out, Scott remembers this. My pal Scott Weigel, who's hanging in chat. We played a lot of it when we first had, I would say it was the first 3 Ziploc bag releases from Task Force Games. We played a lot of Starfleet battles. And there were quite a few of us who played. And just as more stuff came out, it just got more and more complex. And it's sort of like, Wizard of the Tower says they did the Humble Bundle that was recently out for Call of Cthulhu. $30, tons of stuff. We talked about Humble Bundle being just an absolute fantastic source for tabletop role-playing game purchases from larger publishers. So yes, very, very nice. Very nice. Rory says they like the RuneQuest 2nd edition reprints too, actually. Trying to remember, have I seen those? I don't think I did. Maybe I did. Gosh, so much stuff. It's like, if you missed it, our 1100th review was just this week, and it was Neon Lords of the Toxic Wasteland. 1,100 reviews on thegaminggang.com. Yikes. Yikes. Rory's asking about if people know about the DC Heroes reprints. Yes, we talked about that on last night's show. It was one of our news pieces. So we have got that. All righty then. So tonight we're going to talk about if it's finally time to leave Dungeons and Dragons and Wizards of the Coast behind. But first, I think it's time for a brief intermission.
It's intermission time, folks. Time out for a delicious snack in our sparkling refreshment building. Every item a fresh, appetizing taste treat.
You've seen the show. It was quite a treat. But now you'd like something to eat, so right this way to the concession stand serving Castleberries, the best in the land. Yes, sir. Castleberries is real southern barbecue. Choice cuts of meat slowly cooked over open pits of smoldering oak coals for honest-to-goodness barbecue flavor. You'll also find hot coffee, cold soft drinks, and delicious ice cream in our snack bar to go with your Castleberry sandwich. Just look at that generous helping of rich, juicy barbecue. Yum, yum. For a real taste thrill, Castleberry's barbecue will fill the...
Visit our snack bar and treat yourself to some delicious Castleberry's pit-cooked barbecue sandwiches. Cooked the Castleberry way, slowly over open pits of glowing charcoal, then seasoned with a sauce that's zesty, yet delightfully mild to please the entire family. Also at the snack bar, you'll find popcorn and soft drinks and candy and French fries to go with your Castleberry's barbecue sandwiches. There's plenty of time before the movie starts, so visit our snack bar right now for Castleberry's pit-cooked barbecue sandwiches.
Let's go up to the surface for some Wilkins coffee.
I'll never touch the stuff. Oh.
You should. It's a whale of a coffee.
Thundering across the galaxy and into legend. The last brave starfighters who become Space Raiders. The action explodes as the fight for freedom races across the universe.
Get us out of here!
A frightened boy, a last-ditch hero and his alien crew, soaring into battle to save the galaxy.
There's another one coming in.
Such an appealing little boy.
But you touch this boy, I'll kill you where you stand.
Desperados, battling for their lives, suddenly given something to live for.
Things are always happening that we don't expect. Now, you can think of them as an ordeal, or you can think of them as a great adventure. It's the adventurers who make it.
We got no retro rockets. We're gonna crash!
High adventure, non-stop danger, a battle for life and glory with the future of the galaxy in the hands of 5 desperate outlaws and the 10-year-old boy who teaches them the true meaning of courage.
Don't let it touch you!
Space Raiders in a last desperate battle. Aliens from 1,000 worlds.
And now for you, boy.
Soaring through deadly laser fire. With the one boy brave enough to challenge the deadliest force in the universe.
We could fight him. Look, you're a kid. You're no gunner. I'm the only gunner you got. Come on, kid. Let's go get him.
He's a stowaway on a stolen ship, 10 years old and 10 million miles from home. Space Raiders, the greatest adventure a kid ever had.
Awful. Just ungodly bad. But hey, you watch that 2-minute trailer, you don't have to see the movie. You're all good. funny enough, I never saw that film. I did see Battle Beyond the Stars. And as people are mentioning in chat, it's like, oh, they're recycling the footage from that. Yeah. Because I remember that. I remember the stupid looking snail ship. What the hell it's supposed to be. TJ is with us in chat, says, oh God, I remember watching this. Yeah, it's pretty bad. Pretty bad. Daryl Aritz is with us in chat. So is Omenal popping on in. Very good to see you. It's like, once again, we've got a lot cooking in chat tonight. So we're going to start talking about our topic in just a moment. But I also want to let you know that if you are on Blue Sky, be sure to follow me over on Blue Sky. It's the Gaming Gang is the nickname there. And I am aiming to get 1,000 followers over there. And if I'm able to pull off 1,000 followers before the end of Black Friday, I am actually going to give away a copy to, well, basically what I'll do is I'm going to do PDFs for every 100 followers. I'm going to select one of them randomly and give them a copy of their choice, Dragonbane, Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, or Castles and Crusades. So that is the contest. I mentioned that in the community tab here on YouTube, and somebody had said, oh, another lefty fleeing to a leftist echo chamber. I was like, and I did not respond kindly. And it's like, okay, first of all, I've actually been on Blue Sky back when it was invite only. So it's not like I just went over there. It's a small community, so I don't really promote that much. I post the news and shows and stuff like that. But a lot of people have been going over there, and somebody was like, that high as far as the subs, or not subs, followers. Yeah, I'm at like 480. So millions of people have been jumping on board. So Flaming Heron says, you need to be invited to use it, right? No, it's open for anybody now. It's been open for a while. That's why millions of people have signed up in the past week or so. Anyway, so TJ says they've got triple the amount they had for followers and about 80% more actual interaction. I don't get a ton of interaction simply because I think it's mainly because most of the stuff that gets posted is like news pieces. It's not stuff where it's like, oh, hey, what do you think of this? Right. So anyway, I wanted to float that out there so you know, if you are on Blue Sky or you're going to be joining Blue Sky, be sure to follow the Gaming Gang there because, like I said, if I crack 1,000 followers by, we're talking 9 days, it's not really a lot. Not at all. Not being almost halfway there. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens. You never know. All right, so let's get on with tonight's topic. Because the question is now the perfect time? Is the time right for people to leave Dungeons and Dragons and Wizards of the Coast behind? I know there are a lot of you watching live who've already done this. There are people who are going to be watching on Memorex who've already done this. But then there are also many, many more people out there who are still kind of locked into this D&D ecosystem. And the first thing we want to keep in mind is, why do people play Dungeons and Dragons? Why is it Dungeons and Dragons that they play as opposed to Pathfinder or Call of Cthulhu or Traveler? Why is Dungeons and Dragons the game that the vast majority of role players out there already, I shouldn't say already, actually cut their teeth on? It was the first role-playing game that they ever played. Now, many of us, my age, that was like the only game in town, really. That was the first tabletop role-playing game. So there wasn't a lot of competition out there. But nowadays, it's because it's got the name recognition. And playing Dungeons and Dragons, yeah, sure. Some people still look down their nose at people who get together and not just play role-playing games, but even just play board games. They're kind of like, really? Like, okay, I'll go home and go turn on the Hallmark channel and watch that for hours because that's normal. But it's the name recognition that drives people in. And even Keith, I want to say his last name is Amundsen, who lives in the Chicago area, I believe, who I have mentioned his books quite a few times, especially The Monsters Know What They're Doing. And he was running, if I remember correctly, I think it was GURPS Fantasy. Ugh. And his wife had asked him if he would consider running Dungeons and Dragons for some people that she worked with who kind of wanted to check out Dungeons and Dragons. And I guess he was kind of kicking around, well, why don't I just show them, GURPS? Why don't we just play GURPS? And then he thought, well, you know what? They want Dungeons and Dragons. I guess I'm going to give them Dungeons and Dragons. And at that point in time, it'd been a long time since he had actually run D&D. So part of the D&D ecosystem and the feeder to that ecosystem is simply the name recognition. There are people out there who probably think the only fantasy role-playing game out there is Dungeons and Dragons. So keep that in mind. But the problem is that now is really good time to break away from Dungeons and Dragons if that's all you have played or all you have run in the past. Part of that is because you're in the midst of a new edition. I don't give a shit what Wizards of the Coast wants to say. That it's not a new edition. It is a new edition. Is it radically different? No, it is not. Is it mechanically different? Yes, it is. So that means it is a new edition. And I know one of the reasons why they kept saying it's not a new edition is because a lot of people have sunk a lot of money into 5e. They've got pretty hefty investments in 5e. Weren't going to be too happy to learn that, well, none of that's going to come into play. So now you got a new edition. You got to buy all new stuff. People who play Dungeons and Dragons are not people who play Warhammer. They're not Warhammer 40K fans for the most part. There's a little bit of crossover. People play Games Workshop miniatures games. Every few years, they're like, yeah, here comes a new edition. They know it's coming. People play Dungeons and Dragons, maybe not so much. Maybe not so much. So W. Ford says, won't abandon D&D, but they'll take a break from it for now. Well, I'm not necessarily saying abandon it. I'm saying leaving it behind. And the reason why I'm talking about this is because past few shows, we've discussed how people are not going to have the same sort of buying power as they have in the past. You can argue with me. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Hopefully I'm wrong. But that is the impression that I have got. A lot of economists have this impression as well. So the question that becomes, who do you want to support? Who do you want to keep in business? Does Hasbro need your dollars? Probably not. Not you as an individual gamer. Probably not. But can your purchases help keep a smaller publisher afloat? Oh, absolutely. Because for one, they don't have the same profit requirements as a Wizards of the Coast will. I'm not sure if a lot of people are aware of this, but Wizards of the Coast is about getting ready to release a new science fiction role-playing game that supposedly has nothing to do with D&D. Don't know. Do not know. So if you are into fantasy role-playing games, this is a fantastic time to break away from Wizards of the Coast and Dungeons and Dragons. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you must break away from 5e. If you're used to 5e mechanics, if that's your bag of tricks, which the reality is, 5e Dungeons and Dragons mechanics are not necessarily all that well constructed. Let's be honest, Dungeons and Dragons outside of original D&D has never been intuitive, especially like looking at, say, AD&D, right? And I have a fond nostalgia for AD&D. I didn't play it for long. I ran it even less because, of course, if you follow the gaming gang, you know I run Call of Cthulhu. I have for decades. But just the fact that it's like, okay, well, so for combat, I'm rolling a 20-sided die. Oh, okay, so if my strong man fighter here wants to bend bars, okay, I'm rolling percentile dice. Oh, so my thief needs to roll a 6-sided die. See it. It's like, what? It's like all over the place. And outside of just the core mechanic with the, target number that you have to roll higher than, which permeates much of 5e Dungeons and Dragons, the other subsystems for 5e are kind of whack too. So it's like, okay. That's why tomorrow night, we're going to kick off kind of a series on the Dispatch where we're going to build an old school flavored, it's not going to be OSR, but then again, it's not going to be new SR either. I guess we'll say an old school fueled fantasy role-playing game. And tomorrow we're actually going to talk about attributes. And it's going to be a discussion, right? It's not just going to be me talking at you. Raven is with us in chat, says for their D&D fix, they're moving toward Adventure Conquer King System 2. It's a spiritual successor to BECMI and the Rules Cyclopedia. I have not had an opportunity to take a look at Acts 2. I did share a review of the core rules for the first edition and took a lot of shit from people for reviewing it. Anyway. Flaming Heron says, didn't you try this once before? Yeah, I started a series where, what did I do? About 3 videos? They did all right. But I've had a lot of people asking me, in fact, they've even in chat, people have asked, hey, aren't you ever going to finish that series up? It's like, why not do it on the show? So that way we have a little bit of conversation going on. Let's see. A few more people popping on into chat. It looked like Sly Blue Demon. There you go. Good to see you. So anyway, so now is a perfect time to, like I said, you can put D&D on the shelf if you want, or you can embrace the mechanics if it's kind of like, well, it's all I as game master know. It's all that my players know, and shift gears a little bit. So you may have seen my review of the Tales of the Valiant Game Master's Guide earlier today. Gave it a 10 out of 10. It is excellent. It is designed for Tales of the Valiant, which I'm sure most of you already know is very, very 5e adjacent. So if you are, kind of comfortable with that system, Tales of the Valiant is really excellent. It's a little different. They've broken away a little bit from 5e. The funny thing is, I've given the Game Master's Guide a 10 out of 10. I seem to remember I gave the Player's Handbook, or Player's Guide, whatever it was called, like a 6.5 because it just wasn't different enough. And it's fine, but I'm sure people are thinking, geez, how could you give the Game Master's Guide 10, but the Player's Book is a 6.5? Reality is you don't need this. You do not need this to run Tales of the Valiant. This is kind of along the lines of the Castle Keeper's Guide for Castles and Crusades, where it's just optional, where it's all optional material. There are so many fantastic fantasy role-playing games out there at this very moment that, in my opinion, once again, this is simply my opinion, are far more deserving of your gaming dollar than Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro. Of that, I have no doubt. So just off the top of my head, fantasy role-playing games that I would recommend ahead of Dungeons and Dragons. Now, remember, we're talking D&D. We're not talking third-party 5e adjacent stuff. I have no issue with them, with like third-party stuff. But we've talked about this before. I mentioned this a little earlier in the show. There is just a lot of just steaming dog shit for Dungeons and Dragons from third-party creators. There's steaming dog shit for other role-play games too. Don't get me wrong. It's not as if Dungeons and Dragons has the patent on crap from third-party creators, because it's like stamp D&D on something. It's like stamping OSR on stuff. There's a lot of OSR shit out there too that just absolutely trash. That it shouldn't even be included in like on Drive-Thru RPG, like under the heading of OSR. But it's on there anyway. Warren Rollins is popping on in. Welcome aboard. So Alan Rowe, also joining us in chat, says Castles and Crusades. Absolutely. Rory says Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. Absolutely. RuneQuest, Pendragon, Old School Essentials, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, first or second edition. Yes, I get it. Wizards of the Coast would profit from your purchases of like PDFs and things like that of the old stuff. If you're buying it through a third-party website or used bookstore or stuff like that, they don't. They will not. Chris Lundgren likes RuneScape. I got to be honest, I didn't care for it. I did not care for it that much. Let's see. Morton Rollins says they're waiting for Daggerheart and MCDM. I think a lot of people have cooled on Daggerheart. I think that's the one that's going to hit first out of those two. I think there are still people who are really pumped for Matt Colville's game, which as far as I understand, once again, I don't really know anything about it outside of sharing some news for the Kickstarter. I think that is kind of 5e adjacent. Daggerheart is not. Daggerheart, if I remember correctly, I think utilizes 12-sided dice, if I remember correctly. Hyperborea, DB, very good. Desi Trekkie says the Electrum Archive. Yeah, issue 2. We just talked about it. I think that's built for, it didn't say, but I would take a guess it's probably like old school essentials, or maybe it's just OSR. Chris Lundgren says Osric doesn't get enough love. Absolutely free. Basic Fantasy, absolutely free. In fact, everything for Basic Fantasy is basically free. If you go to basicfantasy.org, if you're not familiar with it, it is, of course, built on, well, I would say that it's got more modern mechanics than just a BX clone would be. And funny enough, there are a lot of adventures for Basic Fantasy, which are kind of ports of old AD&D modules, like, or even D&D modules, like Keep on the Borderlands. Tessie Trekkie says Candela Obscura was like the candle in the wind. W4 asks, anybody have any love for AD&D First Edition? Yeah, sure. Like I said, I've got a bit of nostalgia for First Edition. That's why I got the core books and a few other books. And it wasn't like, oh, I'm buying it because I want to run it. Let's see. The Great Pendragon campaign Rory brings up. Can't wait to see that for the latest edition of Pendragon. That should be pretty cool. Let's see, what other fantasy role-playing games can we float on out there? I already talked about Mouse Rita. I like that quite a bit. You know, we got a lot of new SR stuff out there that a lot of people really love. Fellowship, Into the Odd. That's, I think, Into the Odd's more science fantasy than anything else. But there's just so much out there. And so many creators and so many publishers who could really use your support far more than Wizards of the Coast or Dungeons and Dragons. And once again, I think this is a perfect time to make that break because you're in the midst of the core book releases. So we already have the Player's Handbook out. The Dungeon Master's Guide has just come out. I will not be seeing a review copy of it, so don't hold your breath to see my review of it. Although I have heard through the grapevine, which I don't know if I can necessarily trust the grapevine when it comes to Wizards of the Coast D&D releases, but I've heard good things about it. Now, I actually liked the Player's Handbook for 5.5, gave it an 8 out of 10. Does it still have some of the issues that 5e D&D has? Yeah, sadly enough. Rory says Castles and Crusades is like AD&D with rules that work. If you follow the gaming gang, you know I'm pretty tight with the Troll Lords. I will have a review of Amazing Adventures very shortly by the end of the month. So stay tuned for that. Dolmenwood has been the best system setting game experience they've had in over 30 years, says Paul Bigby. Isn't that OSE? I mean, it is Gavin Norman, I do believe. So I would think that Dolmenwood is built on that. Scott Weagle points out the only D&D they've got is first edition AD&D, almost all of it. Chris Lundgren's talking about Fallout. Yeah, we are focusing on fantasy stuff, though. Otherwise, I would have said, Traveler, Yeah, things like that. You can look into some obscure stuff too, which we talked about this a little bit with Ulisses Spiele. You've got The Dark Eye, which I got to be honest, I'm not necessarily a huge fan of because personally, I think it's really clunky. We were talking about the mechanics for Torg being a clunk fest. I think The Dark Eye is a bit, I mean, you're rolling 3 20-sided dice. People complain about having to roll 2 20-sided dice for a lot of modifius role-playing games. Dungeon Crawl Classics, of course. We've got Dungeon Crawl Classics. Keldon is with us in chat, says stuff from Gallant Knight Games. Gallant Knight Games tends to have the line of tiny D6 games. So they've got like Tiny Fantasy. So I reviewed that years ago. Paul Bigby says Mithras looks pretty good, which is kind of RuneQuest with the Glorantha left behind. So it's more traditional fantasy. So there is tons and tons of great fantasy role-playing content out there right this minute. Dragonbane. We were talking about that earlier. Somebody in chat had asked, well, what's my favorite new role-playing game of 2024? And I said, well, my favorite role-playing game off the top of my head that I was exposed to this year is probably Dragonbane. Like that quite a bit. You got Savage Worlds. Flaming Huron is pointing out one of our chat moderators who's not with us tonight, the Madman, is kind of our resident Savage Worlds expert. Pathfinder 2nd Edition, the remaster we just talked about last night. There is a $30 bundle over on Humble Bundle, which includes 72 PDFs, including the 2 core books for the remaster. And this bundle is celebrating the first year of the remaster. That is a rockin' deal. It's got years and years of gaming content in that. But of course, once again, we talked about this last night. You got to be cool with PDFs. So if you're looking to save money, you got to be cool with PDFs. Kevin R. Smith's talking about the 7th Sea. Yes, there's another Humble Bundle, which, as far as I understand, I think I know I shared a news piece about it, but I want to say it's everything that's been released through Chaosium Inc. So it's the latest edition of 7th Sea. Also, it's like a fantasy swashbuckling setting. So you've got that. Testy Trekkie says they played Heart last night as a one-shot. It was creepy and wonderful, and their witch was constantly turning into her horrific ribbon entrail spider form. Very nice. Very cool. So yes, if you need some ideas, check out any one of the over 1,100 reviews. Not all of them are going to be fantasy role-playing related, but there are plenty of them. Shadow Dark, Chris Lundgren's pointing out. So if you're looking for an old school vibe with new styled mechanics and some of the mechanics that you've seen in some of the new SR role-playing games out there, fantastic choice. Problem with Shadow Dark is it's very, very difficult to actually get a physical copy right now. Wizards of Towers talking about Vaesen. Vaesen's not really epic fantasy. It's not in the same wheelhouse as Dungeons and Dragons. We're kind of focusing on that kind of fantasy role playing. Like I said, otherwise we'd be talking about Traveler and Salvage Union and other games that are out there too. So to wrap up, I personally think if you're looking to make a break from the Dungeons and Dragons ecosystem, this is a perfect time before you sink too much cash into this new 5.5. So, like I said, Player's Handbook's been out for a bit. Dungeon Master's Guide came out, what was it, last week or week before that? And the Monster Manual is arriving next year. So if you're dissatisfied with the direction Wizards of the Coast has gone in, or if you're dissatisfied with the direction Dungeons and Dragons has gone in, there is definitely something out there which is going to fit perfectly what you're looking for, fit your needs, and entertain the hell out of the players at your game table. Keith Lewis says they're sinking exactly diddly dollars and squat cents into 5.5. So the premise of this video is not for me to like shit on Wizards of the Coast, because I'm not. All I'm saying is Dungeons and Dragons is not the only game in town. It is certainly not the best game in town by a country mile. And as things might get tighter for tabletop gaming publishers out there, I think it's important that people really do look at some of the better options that are out there. You don't need to play Dungeons and Dragons because it's Dungeons and Dragons. And I'll tell you right now, if you're introducing a role-playing game to people who have never played before, and they're like, well, I want to play Dungeons and Dragons, you can run whatever the hell you want because they don't know what Dungeons and Dragons is. If it's a fantasy role-playing game and there's monsters in it and swords and magic and, oh, look, there's a dragon, it's going to be Dungeons and Dragons. W. Forge is asking, Dungeon Fantasy? If you want to recommend it, you can. Go ahead. Wizard of the Tower said they told a certain large YouTube channel that D&D was not the only option, and did they get attacked? Well, because people are idiots. I think we've realized that. I think it's pretty obvious. Chris Lundgren mentions Tunnels and Trolls. If you can get it. I know there's a new company that's got the rights to it. Don't know what's going on with it. Flaming Hero says, for W Forge, it's safe to talk about Steve Jackson games. Yeah, you can go ahead. I'm not going to talk about them. Tales Lantia, I don't know much about. I also would not, oh gosh, what the hell is Mars Barker's game? Off the top of my head, I can't remember it. I would not like make a recommendation for that. Yeah, Flaming Arrow says, yeah, we just don't talk Palladium here. Hackmaster, Sean O'Donnell points out, if I remember, isn't Hackmaster kind of like D&D 3 adjacent, something like that? The Badger says they expect Rebellion Unplugged to drop a bundle for Tunnels and Trolls next year, as it's going to be the game's 50th anniversary. I got to be honest, I would hope that they would release a new edition. It doesn't have to be crazy different. And Tunnels and Trolls is great. I've reviewed it. It's not exactly the best presented fantasy role-playing game around. I say it whenever I make reference to Tunnels and Trolls. For a game that came out in 1978, 79-ish, its mechanics are relatively modern, far more modern than Dungeons and Dragons. And it's kind of interesting the way like combat works, where the group is acting together. And I've said before, I've always had the impression that higher level adventures start bogging down because you're rolling so many dice. And I know there's ways to get around it, but I kind of get the feeling that Tunnels and Trolls is probably best suited for lower level or mid-level adventuring. Dark Autumn Scribe says they'll say it again, RuneQuest. We love RuneQuest around here. I just reviewed Lands of RuneQuest, the Dragon Pass. So that was just, what was it? A couple days ago, 3 days ago. Somebody just mentioned Tunnels and Trolls came out in 75. That is correct. So I think the edition that I had seen is like 79. But yeah, that would be cool. I'd love to see that back out because a lot of people out there are, curious about Tunnels and Trolls, and they've heard good things about it. And Ken St. Andre is still around, although I think he's moved on now. I think he's focusing on monsters. I don't get the impression he really wants any sort of, I don't want to say affiliation with Tunnels and Trolls. I think his time is done with Tunnels and Trolls, which is too bad. And then, of course, yes, if you want Crunch, Rollmaster, a.k.a. Chartmaster. Yeah, Scott remembers that one. Paul Bigby says they enthusiastically backed Cubicle 7's Victoriana crowdfunding project, which is, I think, for 4th edition of it, 3rd or 4th. So, all right. Game Cat is popping on in. Good to see you. So that is it for tonight's show. So once again, like I said, I'm not shitting on Wizards of the Coast or Dungeons and Dragons. I'm just saying you might want to support some smaller publishers out there who could most definitely use your support far more than say, I don't know, Wizards of the Coast or Hasbro. Gleeman RX asks if I know about Humans. I think they had kickstarted that, where it's Monsters, which is kind of essentially Tunnels and Trolls, but you play as monsters. And this was going to be like a supplement that gave you the option to actually play adventurers. Chivalry and Sorcery, yes, I just reviewed Chivalry and Sorcery. Very interesting, but probably the crunchiest fantasy role-playing game system I have ever seen. I could not imagine running it. I would think it's probably fairly difficult to play. So, all right. Anyway, that is it for this time out. Remember, tomorrow night, we're going to start off with building an old school fueled fantasy role-playing game from scratch. We're going to focus on attributes, probably delve a little bit into action resolution as well, because I've got some ideas there. And you might be surprised, or you might not. All depends, but hopefully you tune in. We hang out for that. Anyway, if you're watching live, thank you very much. If you watch live, took part in chat, a bigger thank you, because not only were you keeping me company, you're keeping each other company as I, babble on and on. But of course, I know a lot of folks out there, you don't have an opportunity to watch live. Doesn't matter if you're watching live or on Memorex. Really do appreciate you taking time out to watch any of the over 2,100 videos on the Gaming Gang channel. Of course, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com, the newly redesigned of thegaminggang.com, for all the latest in tabletop gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more you are not going to find here on YouTube. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. If you like the video, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, by all means, please subscribe. And if you do subscribe, don't forget to ring that bell, because it's not only going to let you know when the Dispatch streams live Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday evenings at 7 p.m. Central, I'll also let you know when I share other videos, such as today's review of the Tales of the Valiant Game Master's Guide from my friends over at Cobalt Press. Everybody enjoy the rest of your morning, afternoon, evening, whatever time of day it is in your neck of the woods. I will be back tomorrow. Once again, I'm Jeff McAleer. Thank you kindly for watching. And as always, I certainly hope all of you get to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your gang.